Hey guys, welcome back to learning about writing a literary essay about character. Today we're going to talk about details that reflect the author's purpose. Last week you wrote an essay about the three little pigs and how the third little pig was an admirable character because of various things that he did in the story. Today we're going to talk about how we can take that to the next level to make sure we're including our thoughts connected to why the author put some of these details in the story, how the author helps guide us to understand their purpose for their essay and for their story. Here's a chart that will help you understand what we're doing today. It says how to write a literary essay about a character. We're going to read selected bits of stories that we've already read. We're going to notice details, we're going to think, we're going to talk, and we're going to write to explore why is this detail here. Remember, when we were writing personal narratives, we only include details that would help our readers understand our purpose, understand our central idea. So today we're going to analyze how authors do that so that we can then analyze a story and have an opinion about it. Today we're going to use the story 11 by Sandra Cisneros. It's been a while since we've read it, but I'm sure all of you know the story. If not, make sure you reread it before you continue so you can remember what's going on in the story. So as we're thinking about why the author included certain details in their story, here are some thought prompts to help you as an essayist think and write about what the author wrote. Maybe the author included this because, on the other hand, perhaps, or it could be that, I wonder if. Now remember, these are only writing prompts. If you have your own ideas of how to write and get your sentences started, that's fine too. But if you get stuck, go ahead and use these sentence starters to help you get going on thinking about why the author included certain details to help us understand their purpose, their central idea about that character. Remember, this is kind of like characterization, which we've done before. Thinking about how the character looks and dresses, thinking about how they speak, their actions, their thoughts, their feelings, what others say and think about that character, and how that reveals the personality of the character. Only now we're taking it a step further and we're thinking about why the author included those characterization details so we can get deeper and closer to the central idea, what the author's real purpose is for writing this story. All right, let's go to 11. Okay, so here's the story, and you can see that there are a couple of things that I have already underlined. In a few minutes, you're going to be doing the same thing to your own story, but let's take a look at how I would do it if I were assigned this. So the first one I underlined says, and you don't feel 11 at all. Maybe the author included this because she wants to set the scene to make sure we understand that Rachel is celebrating her 11th birthday, but does not actually feel 11. Or it could be the author wants us to relate to the main character because we understand how sometimes we don't feel our age right away when we celebrate a birthday. Notice how I underline something, one sentence, but then I can think about why the author included this detail because it reveals a little bit about Rachel's thoughts and feelings, but now I understand a little bit more about maybe why the author included this detail in the story the way she wrote it. Here's another one. You might say something stupid. Maybe the author included this because she wants us to have a little foreshadowing that maybe Rachel is going to do something stupid. On the other hand, maybe she's just having Rachel teach us something that sometimes you do say something stupid, and that's okay, because that's the part of you that's still 10 and you're still learning how to be a stronger, more mature person. Either way, I think this is a pretty good detail. Here's another one. Today I wish I was 102 instead of 11, because if I was 102, I'd have known what to say when Mrs. Price put the red sweater on my desk. Maybe the author included this because she wants us to know that Rachel isn't feeling old enough or mature enough to stand up to her teacher when she's given the stinky sweater. I wonder if Rachel would have been able to stick up for herself if she had been older. So notice I'm just journaling basically about why I think the author included this sentence, why I think the author revealed Rachel's thoughts, what she's trying to tell us about who Rachel really is. Here's one more. Sitting there with that look on my face and nothing coming out of my mouth. I think the author included this because it gives us more information about how Rachel is just feeling overwhelmed and unable to speak for herself, and she feels out of control of the situation. seems to be an overall theme, so maybe I truly am getting at the author's purpose for this story. Let's take a look at another section. Here's one section that I think is quite interesting. Maybe because I'm skinny, maybe because she doesn't like me, that stupid Sylvia Saldivar says, I think it belongs to Rachel. Maybe the author included this because it's kind of revealing Rachel's thoughts about the reactions of other people. When we talk about characterization, we talk about how other people reacting to characters tells us a little bit more about who the character actually is. But here, we're not really given any facts, true facts about Sylvia Saldivar, so maybe the author included this to kind of show that Rachel doesn't like this person and she's kind of projecting a little bit of negativity. I wonder if the author included this because she's revealing how Rachel is very frustrated and she's kind of lashing out at other students. Or it could be that Sylvia Saldivar truly is stupid and doesn't like Rachel. Could be both. Here's another spot where it's revealing Rachel's thoughts about other characters. It says, because she's older than the teacher, she's right and I'm not. I think the author included this because it's Rachel resigning to the fact that since the teacher is an adult, she doesn't really have a say and she has to do whatever the teacher tells her, which I think many children feel. I wonder if she had said something, if Mrs. Price would have actually taken the sweater back. Notice that I am still looking at the items in the story, looking at places where the author revealed Rachel's character, but now I'm thinking about why the author included it. Here's one more. I moved the red sweater to the corner of my desk with my ruler. I think this reveals the pure disgust that Rachel has for this sweater. Later on, it reveals that it stinks like cottage cheese and it's all stretched out and it's got germs that aren't hers because she knows this sweater isn't hers and it's been on the floor of the coat closet for several months. And I think it just, her actions here show us very, very clearly what her disgust is and how she's feeling about it. We also know, because we know the story, that Mrs. Price gets very angry at her for this action, but she still does it anyway. All right, now you're not going to actually just talk this out and underline it and write it on your story. In Google Classroom, you're going to find a document where you're going to have to get details from the narrative you choose and add why the author included this detail. You're going to be doing that by filling out this chart. Okay, so on the left, you're going to write a quote from your narrative choice, and on the right, you're going to write down some reasons for why the author may have included this detail in the narrative. Don't forget to look back at that chart of possible writing prompts to help get you started if you end up being stuck. All right, here's how I would fill it out if I was talking about 11, those pieces that I just showed you and underlined. The first one says, and you don't feel 11 at all. And here's what my journaling was about it. It said maybe the author included this because she wants to set the scene to make sure we understand that Rachel is celebrating her 11th birthday, but does not actually feel 11. Or it could be that the author wants us to relate to the main character because we understand how sometimes we don't feel our age right away when we celebrate a birthday. Notice how I use 2 sentence starters with 1 detail from the narrative. You can just use 1, but when you talk longer, it shows a little bit more thinking and it helps you get to the heart of why this author is actually including this detail. So it's okay if your why is longer than the quote that you get from the story. Here's another one that I talked to you about. Today I wish I was 102 instead of 11, because if I was 102, I'd have known what to say when Mrs. Price put the red sweater on my desk. Okay? This is what I said to you when we were looking at that in the story. Maybe the author included this because she wants us to know that Rachel isn't feeling old enough or mature enough to stand up to her teacher when she's given the stinky sweater. I wonder if Rachel would have been able to stick up for herself if she had been older. Notice again, I used 2 writing prompts to get me started. Remember, the writing prompts are just there for if you get stuck. If you have your own way of journaling about what you wrote, feel free to use those. Just make sure you fully explore why you really think the author included this detail. And then one more quote says, sitting there with that look on my face and nothing coming out of my mouth. My responsibility after writing that detail would be to explain why the author included this detail. And I can use those writing prompts, or I can come up with my own way of explaining why that's in there. All right, essayists, it's time for you to try this on your own. You're going to go into Google Classroom and you're going to find the assignment. and you're going to choose a quotes from your own narrative. There are 3 that you can choose from that we've already read in class and analyzed together. You can use the bracelet, all summer in a day, or thank you, ma'am. Any one of these 3 are correct. If you have your paper copy, that might be easier. These should all still be in your English folder. But if you don't, I've also included digital copies attached to this assignment. Feel free to print them out if you need to, or you can open them up and mark on them as a PDF. Last but not least, make sure you write the title of the story and the author that you choose. You don't want to have a bunch of quotes and your thoughts about a story and then I don't know what story you're talking about. So make sure you tell me the title and the author. Alrighty, off you go. Here's the prompts again just to make sure that you know that you can use them if you get stuck. I look forward to looking at your charts. Have a wonderful day.